go ahead and begin the webinar. And again, what we're going to be covering today is parts aging and parts inventory aging, just to get a better idea of how to better manage your older parts, see what's out there, see when you've last purchased something, when something has last been sold, how we can mark parts obsolete, and also how to do physical inventories by classes. So I'm going to go ahead and begin by opening up a parts and service module. All right. And the first thing we're going to do is show you a couple tools. Now, I'm actually going to jump to reporting. I apologize. That's where I want to go. And I'm going to show you the reports you can run to look at your aging. Now, I have them saved under my favorites just to get them through access a little bit quicker, but they're actually going to be under the parts reports here and then your aging reports, okay? And then the two reports I want to show you is your last activity date and your last purchase date. Basically, on the last activity date, now I'm going to filter it per location. If you're a one-location dealer, you really don't have to worry about that. If you're a multi-location dealer, you can go ahead and select your profit center or run it for all profit centers to your need. But then the main part here is the middle, and it's based on what you want to see, what the results you want to see. Now, do you want it done on your last purchase date, on the last activity date, or the last sold date? And that's totally up to your discretion which one you want to use. But for an example, I want to see parts that I haven't sold in over a year. So I'm going to put less than, and then today is May 30th. So I'm going to go back to May 30th of 2018. And there we go. And then I want to sort my parts, sort my report by part number. And when I hit show results, it's basically now going to show me anything that hasn't been sold older than a year, basically over a year. Now this date preference can be totally up to you. You can select 6 months, 3 months, 90 days. That's totally up to you. But you can see here basically, for an example, you know, last sold date is 2/9/18, so this has been over a year. So you can see here the last date received, which would be your last purchase date, for an example. It still gives you both datas, but the data it's pulling is based on the last sold date. So from here, you can review, you know, when the last time you sold it, because this helps you determine, hey, if it's been over a year and we only have 2 left, I may want to discard this part. You may want to just, you know, create an entry to discard these parts and go from there. But that's the purpose of this report. You can basically see how long it's been since you sold something, and at that point you can determine whether you're going to keep it or not, or maybe mark down the pricing on it to get it sell. You know, better to sell it for a cheap price than have it there sitting at all. So that's the purpose of running this report on here. And again, you can filter it by profit center, but the report gives you basically the month, the totals per year, the part number, and then obviously you can see here the last date it was sold. That's what I'm using to run this report by. But if we go back to the report, you can do the same concept on last activity date. You know, when was the last time it was ordered? And then you have the option to use the last purchase date. Now, our next report is aging report from the last purchase date. So kind of your preference in that one, but for an example, aging report from the last purchase date lets you see, so obviously again, we need to filter for our profit center. Number of days since last purchase date, so so anything that I've bought within, or let's say, you know, 90 days to 300 days, basically. On there, and then I'm going to sort it by part number. And when I hit show report here, it's basically going to see the last time I purchased something that's at least 90 days old, but not over 300 days old. Again, that date range is totally up to the dealer's discretion. Based on what you put on there is the results you get. So for example, this first part number here, it's telling me 8/22/18 was the last day I purchased it, 281 days old. All right, so and I have 17 on hand, and it does give you a sales history. So if you do see for 2018 a consistent sales history, it may be a part you don't have to worry about. It just fell within your criteria, but you're looking at it, making sure on there. The purpose of these aging reports is there's tools you can use to help you delete them and mark them obsolete so they stay out of your physical inventory. Again, if it's a part you want to get rid of, you don't want to make counts on, the purpose of this is so you can clean up your parts before you begin a physical inventory, because if you end up cleaning up 40, 50 parts off of your inventory, that's 40, 50 parts you don't have to go verify or make a count for, or that are on your physical inventory to begin with, because you've taken care of them on the front end, all right? So now, going back to using some of the tools to help you get rid of that inventory. If I go to tools and then parts tools, there is mark parts obsolete, okay? And this is one of the bigger tools that you want to run based on those reports, right? You're going to go through the individual parts and find out what you want to do with them. The report gives you the data. Now in the report, you're going to go into the individual parts and find out. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use basically the same filter report or date you used on your report. So I'm going to go to May of 2018, all categories. You want to make sure you select the part category. You don't want to affect anything. On there. So you want to select the parts category. You can bypass a price range. So you can say, I only want to do this to parts that are between 100 and 150. What this helps you do is, on the more expensive parts, you just don't want to mark those obsolete, especially, if you don't want to make any type of adjustments. So it lets you do that. And you would hit process. And what it's going to do is it's going to mark anything that's in the parts category that's in a price range, a cost from 100 to 150, it's going to mark them obsolete for you, okay? And that will prevent the tool from selecting any other part, especially with the price range in there, all right? Now, there's a second part to this. Once we mark them obsolete, we have to do master inventory. And then under master inventory, there's a delete obsolete parts. And of course, this is letting you know this process will delete all parts that are marked obsolete, have a total on hand, total on order, or total available all to equal of 0, and have never had a transaction of this part. If the part has a transaction, it will mark it as a deleted part, but the system, it will still be in the system. So what it's saying is the part's been sold or processed in the system, it has transaction type, it's still going to delete it, but it doesn't hard delete it. You can still pull up that part. It's just going to be checked off as a deleted part, and you'd have to specifically look for a deleted part in the system. But it's important to know that the system will mark it obsolete, but it won't delete it. It'll bypass it when you go to run this tool. And that's because if the part has an on-hand quantity, it is wanting to adjust it in the proper accounting transaction. So basically it wants to account for this part. So that's why you go through the report, you determine what parts you want to delete off, and that's when you're going to go into that individual part and make an adjustment for that part to 0. So there's an accounting entry made automatically to account for that adjust off, and then you can mark it obsolete. All right, and you can hit process, and that will keep your inventory clean when you go to do a physical inventory. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to jump into is using class and source to sort your parts. And what this does is, if I do search, and let's say for an example, I'm going to do a hitch search here, and I'm going to hit list. Here's all my parts that are in the class of hitch. The common practice or best practice for this is you should always categorize your parts. You should class your parts, and then you can class and then source them on top of that. If you wanted to, basically categorizing your parts to the need of the dealership. What this helps you do is when you go to do a physical inventory, okay, when you do a search, all right, let's say I do class hitch, okay, and I do view. This lets me now do a parts mass update to all the parts that are in that search criteria. If I do parts mass update, I have my option here. Any of these fields now will update to that part if I needed to. All right, now this process will change all parts that were returned on your inventory search results, 8 parts. Okay, and then once you make your change here, you can hit process and all those parts get updated at once. Okay, now if you try to do the parts mass update without doing a search first, it's going to come back and say you must do a search in order to use the parts mass update. All right. All right. So that'll help you. The parts mass update will help you categorize or put your parts in a class, because now the next thing I want to take you to is tools, parts tools, and then physical inventory. Oops, sorry, I did not want to do that. Tools, parts tools, physical inventory. Okay. And now when you go to start a physical, to help you keep those counts more accurate, you have your cycle counts, but there is a cycle specific class source. So for an example, if I do hitch, all right, I've cleaned up my hitch. I want to do a cycle. It's basically a cycle count for hitches. Now I have all my parts on here with their bins. So now I can do a physical just for that class, and it will help me keep my parts inventory cleaner. So this isn't by bin, it's just by the class hitch. And then in here, I can go look up my parts, and then I can input my count quantities. So I have 2 for that bin. All right, this one shows -7, so I want to zero that back to 0. I don't have any on hand, and I can zero out my negative parts. You know, found out I had 5 of these actually. All right, and then this one, total on hand, I only had 1. I had 3 of these. This one actually had my, so I'm just going through and verifying my bin quantities. See, so actually, apologize. This should be the bin count. And then 17. All right, see, so your plus or minuses are equaling to what you originally had. And also this helps you adjust it. So let's say these were in backwards. You had 17 in this bin and then 53 in this one. This will help you adjust that basically to keep it clean the accurate way. So again, if there's a part on here that you don't need, you can just simply highlight and delete it. But at this point, I've done my cycle class count. All right, put these back, and I can go ahead and post this count. All right, and then I can print my variants to give to my accounting department so they can make the proper adjustment on the accounting side once that's done through that physical. Okay, so again, it's just saving us some time. On the physical side, once we cleaned up the parts, that's why we want to run the parts aging report and the last purchase date to help us determine what parts we want to eliminate from the system, clean those out, and keep our inventory as clean as possible at all times. All right. So that's all I got for you for today as far as parts aging. These are short webinars on some basic information. This recording will be available, so it'll be posted on our website. So please feel free to click on the link for there in order to do that. One thing I didn't mention, we do have documents on the obsolete process on our website on the www.motilitysoftware.com, and that will let you see the step-by-step process for physical inventory, for doing a parts mass update, or for also doing a parts obsolete process. All right, and there's a step-by-step documents on our website. I want to thank everyone and have a wonderful rest of your day.